When Daniel first stepped into house number 7, it felt almost too perfect. A narrow, quiet street where the lamps flickered just enough to cast long shadows. The rent, strangely cheap. The house clean, but something about it felt cold, as if it hadn't truly been lived in for years. The landlord was polite but tense, his eyes twitching, hands shaking slightly as he handed over the keys. "You'll like it here," he said quickly. "Very peaceful. Just don't worry about the basement. It's locked for a reason." Daniel barely noticed. He was exhausted, broke, and desperately needed a fresh start. To him, house known. 7 was salvation, a place to forget his past and maybe even sleep without nightmares. But on the third night, everything changed. At exactly 3 a.m., Daniel shot up in bed, heart pounding, room ice cold. From the hallway, a sound, soft sobbing, faint but unmistakable. A woman's cry, desperate and broken, echoing just beyond his bedroom door. He held his breath and listened. It was coming from the basement door, and it was only just the beginning. The next morning, Daniel convinced himself it was nothing. Old house, thin walls. Might be the neighbor's TV or someone crying upstairs, he told himself. But deep down the sound had felt too personal, too close. Like someone had been just a few feet away whispering through the wood. The next night, it returned. M on the dot. This time, he didn't stay frozen in bed. He got up slowly, each step towards the hallway floorboards creaking under his weight. As he reached the basement door, the air turned heavier, colder, like walking into fog that no one else could see. He leaned forward, pressing his ear gently against the wood. At first silence. Then ha, a choked sob. Then another, and another. It wasn't just crying, it was grief. Deep, jagged, soul-shattering weeping, like someone had been locked down there for years and had long stopped believing anyone would come. Daniel's skin crawled. Locked, but it wasn't the lock that frightened him. It was what he felt on the other side. The next day, Daniel decided to casually bring it up. He called the landlord, trying to sound normal. "Hey, quick question. That basement, does it lead anywhere? Just curious. I heard some old pipes banging last night." The line went silent for a few seconds. Then the landlord replied too quickly, "Just storage. Old junk, nothing down there. It's been locked for years. Don't worry about it." The call ended. But Daniel couldn't shake off the way the man's voice had tightened, like someone caught mid-lie. Why did he answer so fast? Why not ask what Daniel heard? That night, things got worse. At exactly 3 a.m., as if the house knew, the hallway light outside Daniel's room flickered once, twice, then went completely out. A cold wave rushed through the air like the oxygen itself had turned stale. Then, without warning, he whined loudly and ran under the bed, tail between his legs, something he had never done before. Daniel stood in the hallway, heart pounding. The crying didn't come that night, but somehow, that was worse. Daniel couldn't sleep. His usually fearless dog had started avoiding that entire hallway. So he decided to do something simple, something logical. He opened the voice recorder on his phone, placed it just an inch away from the basement door, and left it running. If it's all in my head, he thought, the recording will be silent. The next morning, sunlight filtered lazily through the curtains. Daniel reached for his phone with stiff hands. Part of him wanted to delete the file without listening, pretend it never happened. But curiosity or something else forced him to hit play. The audio crackled softly at first, just ambient noise. A faint creak here, the hum of silence. Then a sound, click, like an old switch being turned. Then breathing, slow, deliberate breathing, not his, not even human. And then a voice, so close to the mic it sounded like it was inside his skull. A woman's whisper, low, icy. "Get out, you're living in my house." Daniel froze. The room seemed to shrink around him. He replayed it. The whisper wasn't begging. It wasn't even crying. It was angry. Territorial, possessive, like the voice wasn't warning him, it was promising something. Daniel tried to ignore it. He really did. But after hearing that whisper on the recording, after hearing her sleep, had become impossible. The house felt different now. He could feel it watching him. He waited for the clock to strike 3:20 a.m. again. Not out of curiosity anymore, but out of something darker, something that felt like a pull from below. He grabbed a rusty hammer from the kitchen drawer and his old flashlight, still half charged. The hallway felt heavier with every step, like the very walls were trying to stop him. He stood before the basement door. The lock stared back at him, old and corroded, as if untouched for years. With a trembling breath, he raised the hammer. Bang! The first hit echoed like a scream. Bang! The second made the door tremble. Clack! The lock snapped loose, and the door creaked open on its own. A gust of air rushed out, not cold, damp, thick and rotten. A metallic stench filled his lungs, like rusted iron mixed with old dead water. Daniel gagged, covering his mouth. He turned on the flashlight. The beam barely cut through the swirling dust and blackness. Cobwebs danced in the air, and the first steps were steep and creaky wooden planks that groaned under his feet like they remembered something terrible. With each step downward, the sounds of the world above faded. There was only the creak of stairs, and the feeling that something was waiting for him in the dark. Daniel's flashlight flickered. He was halfway down the basement stairs now, breath shallow, footsteps cautious. The beam scanned across mildewed walls, shattered picture frames, broken furniture, forgotten things left to rot in silence. Then it landed on something that didn't belong. In the far left corner of the basement, where the shadows were thickest, sat a figure. Still, motionless. A woman. She was dressed in a long, tattered white gown, stained at the hem with something dark. Her skin was ghost pale, like all color had been drained from her body. Her black hair hung like wet ropes, masking her face completely. She sat crouched, arms wrapped tightly around her knees, weeping softly. The crying, it was her. All along, the same sound he had heard every night. Daniel froze, his mouth opened slightly, the words almost choking in his throat. "Are you okay?" he whispered, barely able to speak. The basement fell into a thick silence. The woman stopped crying. Then slowly, painfully slowly, she turned her head just enough to reveal the edge of her face beneath the curtain of hair. Not fully. Just enough for him to see her skin was cracked, like porcelain with veins of rot. And then she spoke, not shouted, not begged, but with a voice so cold, so hollow, it felt like it came from the foundation of the house itself. "You're living in my house, get out." Daniel stepped back in shock. His flashlight flickered again, then went out. Daniel didn't scream. He didn't even think. His instincts exploded and he ran. Up the stairs, 2 steps at a time, heart hammering, sweat dripping. But when he reached the top, the door was gone. In its place was a wall. He turned. And now the staircase was endless, spiraling downward instead of up. Panic set in. He sprinted down a hallway that hadn't been there before. Long endless walls pulsing like living flesh. Doors lined both sides, but none would open. Some had no handles, others had locks on the outside. And then a mirror, cracked, dirty, hanging crooked on a wall that shouldn't exist. He stumbled toward it, looked in. What stared back wasn't him. It was her, the woman in white, just like she had been until he took her place, weeks later. An online listing popped up quietly on a rental site. House number 7, newly vacant, cozy suburban charm, basement access available, pet-friendly, very peaceful at night. Someone clicks book viewing. Far below the surface, in the silence of the basement, the woman in white crouches in the dark. Only now her skin is newer, her face almost his, and her whisper is ready for the next visitor. "You're living in my house, get out." It was 2:13 a.m. The street was silent. Not the kind of silence that comforts you, but the kind that presses against your chest like something's watching. House No. 11 stood like a tombstone at the edge of the block. Old bricks, rotting wood, windows blacker than night. Everyone in town avoided it, except tonight. A dim streetlight flickered just across the road. The rest of the lane was swallowed in darkness. No cars, no wind, no dogs barking. Stillness like the air itself was afraid to move. And then from the second window on the left, the curtain moved, a slow, deliberate sway, once, twice, but the trees didn't move. The leaves on the ground didn't budge. There was no wind. Jason blinked. He had been standing across the road for nearly 10 minutes, just watching the house. Dared by his friends, his phone clutched in his sweaty hand, filming proof for the group chat. But now his hand lowered slowly. His breath caught. Did that curtain just move? He stepped a little closer. His sneakers crunched softly on the gravel. His eyes fixed on the window. Another movement. This time, the curtain didn't sway. It lifted upward slowly, as if an invisible hand was peeling it back. Jason froze. The hair on the back of his neck rose. Inside the house, nothing. Just a black void behind the glass. No lights, no shapes, no movement. But the curtain stayed lifted, like someone or something was watching him. His mouth went dry, then suddenly the curtain dropped. Hard. Thud. The sound didn't come from outside, it came from inside his head, like a whisper too loud, like a scream too soft. Jason stepped back. He didn't know why. His feet moved on their own. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just a curtain. It was a warning, and it wasn't over, not even close. His name was Jason Crowley. 19 years old, sharp-tongued but broken inside. Ever since his father vanished 7 years ago without a trace, Jason had developed an obsession with places people feared. Haunted buildings, abandoned hospitals, cursed woods, anything that whispered danger. But house number 11. It wasn't just a whisper. It screamed in silence. Jason didn't live far, just 6 blocks down, with his alcoholic uncle who never spoke unless it was to curse. But even as a child, Jason had heard the rumors number 11 isn't haunted, it's hungry. People didn't just leave the house, they vanished. Locals claimed the house was built over something older, much older. Some said a burial ground. Others whispered about a ritual gone wrong in 1897 when the house first appeared on city records. But no family stayed there for long. Fires, murders, suicides, children born with black eyes and no memories. Eventually, the city declared it structurally unsafe, a polite way of saying, "We're too scared to touch it." But Jason wasn't. He needed answers, not just about the house, but about his father. Because the last location ever pinged on his dad's phone was right in front of house number 11, 7 years ago. Same date, same time, 2:13 a.m. Tonight, Jason wanted to know why. But as he stepped closer to the iron gate, now rusted and tangled in dying vines, something felt off, like the night had paused. No insects, no hum of the streetlight, not even his heartbeat, only silence. And the memory of that curtain slowly rising. He pushed the gate, it didn't creak. It opened too easily, as if it had been waiting. Jason stepped through the rusted gate. It stood in unnatural darkness, as if even light refused to go near it. He reached the edge of the porch. The air was thick, dense, heavy, like walking underwater. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted his phone to film, and then it moved, that same curtain. Again. This time, not a gentle sway, but a sharp pull as if snatched violently by an unseen force. Jason flinched, his eyes locked on the window. The camera on his phone zoomed in, closer, tighter. Silence, no sound of wind, no cars, no owls. The world seemed to hold its breath. And then he noticed it. The window wasn't open, it was sealed, glass intact, dust on the inside. No breeze, nothing could have moved that curtain, yet it had moved. Not once, not twice, but 3 times now. Jason's spine stiffened. Goosebumps crawled up his arms like ice spiders. His mouth opened slightly. For a split second behind the curtain, he saw a shape, not a face, not a person, just a formless shadow, still, silent, watching. But when he blinked, it was gone. The curtain fell back into place, still, as if nothing had ever happened. Jason took a step back, then another. But his phone vibrated. A notification. He looked down. Live recording. Stopped file, corrupted, no footage. No proof. Only the pounding in his chest. And that window that cursed lifeless windows still watching. Jason stared at the window, his heart pounding in his throat. That curtain had moved again. The shadow that shaped it wasn't his imagination. But there was something worse than what he saw. It was what he heard next. Footsteps, soft, measured. Inside the house. They echoed down a hallway he couldn't see, but he could feel. The floorboards creaked in a rhythm like someone pacing. Back and forth, slowly, deliberately. Jason's hand gripped his phone tighter, but the screen was still frozen. Recording had stopped. The device felt cold, like it had been dipped in ice water. He looked up again, forcing himself to walk closer to the porch. Then a whisper. Not loud, not clear. Just enough to make his stomach twist. It came from behind the curtain. Not in the house. Not above the house. Behind. That curtain. He leaned forward, barely breathing, straining to hear. Jasoon, his name. It said his name. He stumbled back instinctively, eyes wide, chest rising like he'd surfaced from underwater. No one knew he was here. No one could have seen him. No one. Unless someone or something had been waiting. He turned quickly toward the road, heart screaming for him to run. But the gate was closed. He hadn't touched it. He knew he hadn't. Jason turned back toward the house, and the curtain was gone. Not moved. Gone. Vanished. Now behind the glass stood a figure. No face, no eyes, just a dark, thin body, tall and twisted, holding the curtain in its hand and watching him. Jason's lips trembled. Every part of his body screamed to escape, but his legs felt nailed to the porch. Then the figure lifted a long, bony finger and pointed to the front door. It creaked and slowly began to open. Jason had two choices now: run, or step inside the house where nightmares were born. Jason stared at the figure behind the window, faceless, hollow, inhuman, pointing at the now half-open door. Every instinct begged him to run, but something stronger pulled him forward. Curiosity, grief, or the whisper of his father's voice echoing from within. He stepped inside. The door slammed behind him. Darkness, so thick, so absolute, it felt alive. Pressing on his skin, crawling into his ears, his phone's flashlight flickered, then died. The hallway was narrow, endless, and Jason could hear it again. The footsteps, but now they were behind him. He turned. Nothing. Then a whisper. "Welcome back, Jason." His blood ran cold. It was his father's voice, exactly his father's voice, but stretched, warped, as if someone was wearing it. Jason stumbled back into the hallway wall. Cold, slimy wood met his hands. Then something brushed past his ankle, a child's laugh, but no child. He ran forward blindly, heart slamming, breath breaking, until he reached a door at the end of the hallway. It was half open, inside, moonlight. He stepped in slowly and stopped breathing. There, nailed to the walls, were dozens of curtains, each one labeled, each one stained. And in the center of the room hung a large red velvet curtain, the same one from the window. It was gently swaying, no breeze, no wind. Jason reached out, and from behind it, a pale, disfigured hand reached through him, not touching him, through him. He gasped. Then everything inside him stopped. The room went cold. The curtain fell. On the floor where Jason stood, now only his phone remained, screen glowing, one new recording. In the video, the curtain moved. Jason whispered, and then just before the screen went black, a face. Not Jason's, not human, looking directly into the lens, smiling. "Welcome to House No. 11. Where the curtain doesn't move because of the wind, it moves because it's watching. Like if you felt the breath behind your neck. Share, subscribe if you would never enter house number 11. Subscribe if you want to survive the next story. Mr. Dreadmoor is always watching.